Welcome to our presentation on how to successfully verify and appeal your BC property assessment. Our sponsor is Attainment Press at www.attainmentpress.com. Our discussion today is based upon the e-book How to Successfully Appeal Your BC Property Assessment and Reduce Your Property Tax Bill by the authors Peter Morse, that's myself, and Tim Down. Now let me tell you about Tim Down. He's a professional appraiser and licensed real estate agent with over 26 years of experience as an appraiser, assessor, property tax agent, consultant, and realtor. He's also worked as a senior assessment supervisor at the BC Assessment Authority for 11 years. He's helped me out on very complex commercial real estate assessment appeals during my 30-plus years in commercial real estate. But I've also conducted multiple assessment appeals on my personal residences using the same methods and principles that we're going to outline today. So let's look at some common myths about the assessment process and assessments. The first one is that a higher assessment is a good thing, isn't it? Well, not always, and we hope to prove that to you over the few minutes that you're going to be spending with me today. The second myth, a lower assessment will affect your ability to get refinancing. Well, that one is definitely false. And the reason being is that your lender will conduct their own appraisal of your house at the time of refinancing. And they do that and not rely upon the assessment notice from the BC Assessment Authority for this reason. You receive your assessment notice at the end of December, but it is based upon a value of the preceding July 1st. So when you come to the time of getting refinancing, the house value may be significantly different than what is shown on your assessment notice. Another myth is that the municipality needs the money, and if I appeal and get a reduced assessment, the municipality won't have enough money to conduct its affairs. Well, the municipality always needs money, and we're going to show you that no matter what happens with your assessment, that the municipality will have the money in order to conduct its affairs. Appealing to the government never works, so why bother? Well, in this particular case, the BC Assessment Authority wants you to verify your assessment, and if there is an error, to point it out to them. But even at the end of the day, if you and the Assessment Authority still disagree, you'll be appealing to an independent panel of men and women who have agreed to hear your case. They work for neither the government nor the BC Assessment Authority. Finally, the process is difficult. And certainly, looking at it from the outside, it would appear to be very daunting and difficult indeed. But using the processes and methods that we're going to show you, it actually is very simple once you know the inside track. So why should you appeal? Well, the first one is that it's impossible for the BC Assessment Authority to inspect every home every year. That's a very important statement because the method used to create your assessment is something called the direct comparison approach. And to do that accurately, 100% of the time, the BC Assessment Authority would have to inspect every home every year. That's physically impossible. So what do? Well, they use a very sophisticated piece of software. And at the end of the day, after all the data has been input, that software produces a range of values for a typical house. Your house value on your assessment notice may be at the top end or the bottom end of that range of values. And computer errors do occur. Adjustments in the direct comparison approach in order to make two properties relatively comparable is an exercise based upon experience and is very subjective. There may be errors because the Assessment Authority cannot inspect every home every year. And why should you appeal? Well, if you're successful, you will save money year over year over year. So what can you expect today? Well, we'll provide an outline of the taxation process. We'll look at the assessment notice and the appeal process. We'll give you an overview of the three methods to assessing property value and two very important principles for assessing that value. And we'll start to put your case together at a very high level. What you won't get today is legal, accounting, or other professional advice. The information shared today pertains only to your ability to conduct your own verification and appeal of an assessment to a residence, such as a house, a townhome, a condo, or a vacation property. If you have a commercial property, use a professional service specializing in the appeal of commercial property assessments because they are very complicated. We recommend PacWest Commercial Real Estate Advisors, and you can contact them at info@pacwestrealestate.ca. So let's look at the taxation process and how your property tax bill is created. There are three different functions that occur to get to your property tax bill. The first is that the area in which you live will put together their operating and capital budgets. That's the municipal budget, could be the regional district budget. And for the purposes of our discussion today, just keep it very simple. We'll include things such as school district budgets and all of the other budgets in what we call the municipal budget. That budget by law must balance. The BC Assessment Authority, in the meantime, is assessing all of the real estate in the province of British Columbia and determining a value for each piece of real estate. They then create what is known as the assessment roll, and they give that to the taxing authority. What the taxing authority then does is divides the values that the BC Assessment Authority has given them by the budgets that have been given to them by the municipality or regional district. By dividing one number into the other, they create what is known as a mill rate. This is the lowest common denominator of all of the data input so far. They then multiply the mill rate by the assessed value for your individual property, and that's how your property tax bill is created. Now, since you don't have or have very little say in how the municipal budget is created, and because the assessed values are based upon the market value, the only way that you can reduce your property tax bill is by appealing your individual assessment. And that is how you have control over your property taxes. So let's take a look at the assessment appeal process. It starts with the assessment notice. That's received typically at the tail end of December. But if you do not receive it by January 15th, call the BC Assessment Authority because your window of opportunity to appeal is very short. If you disagree with the assessed value on the notice, then discuss the assessment with the BC Assessment Authority, either by phone or in person. If you and the authority still disagree, you have the option to take it to the review panel. And if you wish to do so, you need to file a notice of complaint by January 31st, or the first business day before January 31st if the 31st falls on a weekend. Now, this is very important. You cannot miss that deadline. After you filed your notice of complaint, now you'll want to compile the evidence to present to the assessment review panel. And the reviews are scheduled typically for February and March, but sometimes also in April. We mentioned that there are assessment methods, and I talked about the direct comparison approach, and that is what is used for residences. But I would be remiss if I didn't spend just a moment talking about the other two approaches. The income approach is used for income-producing commercial properties, such as shopping centers, office buildings, and industrial parks. It is not used on residences, even if you have an income-producing suite. The cost approach is a build-up approach, also known as a replacement value approach. That's mostly used for insurance purposes. The direct comparison approach is the approach that is used by the BC Assessment Authority to determine the value of your house. In the direct comparison approach, the assessor looks to obtain two identical or comparable properties. Now, it's virtually impossible to end up with an identical property, so the assessor looks for properties that are close enough and then makes adjustments for the differences between the two properties. There are also two very important principles that come into the assessment process. The first is the assessment at market value? And bear in mind, the market value is what would your property have sold for, not listed for, but sold for on July 1st. The second is the assessed value equitable? In other words, is it fair and similar to other properties? Did you just have an aha moment? The best way to have your property value assessment lowered is to find and point out that the comparison really wasn't an apples to apples comparison, and that there may have been errors in any subjective adjustments made by the assessor to account for any of the differences. Bearing in mind, the assessor probably has not looked at your house or the comparable houses. So let's start putting your case together. The first thing you want to do is find properties that appear to be comparable. They should be of like style, quality, age, size, and certainly in the same area. There is a useful tool online called eValueBC. It is put out by the BC Assessment Authority, and it lists all of the assessed values for all residential properties in the province of British Columbia. Now, notwithstanding the fact that you can look up the assessed value for a home way far away from where your house is located, you should only look at houses in your immediate vicinity in putting together your case. The next step is, once you've got this information, is to make adjustments between your home and the other homes in the immediate area. For an example, if your home does not have a garage, but your neighbor's house has a garage, and you've looked up the values and they seem to be about the same, you have a case for pointing out that you do not have a garage at your property, therefore it is probably going to sell for less. So once you've put all your adjustments in, your data, and you've compiled your case, you'll want to write it out and print 6 to 7 copies. Why so many? Well, you'll want a copy for yourself, obviously, one for the assessor, and one for each member of the review panel. And here's a couple of tips that are rarely ever included in the review panel cases that I've seen. Number one, plot the comparable houses on a map. Bear in mind that the panel probably does not live in your area and is not familiar with it. They'll want to know that the comparables that you are using come from the immediate vicinity. Number two, include pictures. As I say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Now, we don't want you to bother your neighbors to get into their house to take pictures, but you should be able to show that the comparables you have that you're comparing your house against are relatively similar in quality and style to the house that you have. For the review panel, you must appear on time. There are no excuses for this one. If you do not show for your review panel hearing, the review panel will believe that you have agreed with the assessment, and you may be barred from presenting an argument at any later date. But please bear in mind, the panel is independent, and the panel and the assessor are not working against you. However, the assessor does have a professional reputation to protect and will vigorously defend the value that he has come up with. And the panel can't do anything about your property taxes themselves or the municipal services you receive. You should plan on presenting your case in under 10 minutes. And the reason for that is that you will want the panel to have some time to ask some questions. So let's review where we are now. We've gone over the myths of the assessed value, why you should verify and appeal your assessment. We've given you an outline of the taxation process. We've looked at the assessment notice and the assessment appeal process. We've given you an overview of the 3 methods and 2 important principles for assessing value that you can use in developing your case, and we've started to put that case together. But you're probably going to want to learn more. So you should probably buy How to Successfully Appeal Your BC Property Assessment. It provides more information, tips, and presentation script suggestions. It details an effective and proven presentation format that we've used personally. It contains 7 complete step-by-step chapters with nothing left out. It is an ebook and is only available through attainmentpress.com. It's an instant download when you purchase the book. The price is just $39.99 plus taxes. But if you buy now, we're going to give you absolutely free a detailed Excel spreadsheet for preparing your appeal. You can use this spreadsheet for putting all your data together and then sorting that data for your case. If you buy before December 25th and use the coupon code Early Order, you'll also receive a 10% discount to the price I just mentioned. So we'd like to thank you for being with us today. We encourage you to go to attainmentpress.com for an instant download of the ebook How to Successfully Appeal Your BC Property Assessment and Reduce Your Property Tax Bill. The price is just $35.99 with the coupon, and you get the free spreadsheet. Thank you once again.